Vue does a pretty good job of keeping itself isolated from the rest of the page. There's nothing wrong with that, but you may want to control multiple locations on the page. This isn't common practice, but it is possible. Let's say we want Vue to control 2 elements on the page. One solution some developers attempt is to use multiple elements with the same class name. However, this will not work because one Vue instance cannot control multiple elements at once. Let's look at what would happen if we were to attempt that. Inside the document, we're going to change the attribute from ID to class. Then we'll duplicate it. We'll also need to update the Vue instance. Rather than using the ID selector, we'll need to update this selector to a class selector. Let's see what happens after making those changes. After refreshing the page, the first element will have the name inside the template. The second element is not processing the expression. Instead, the expressions get outputted as plain text, not what we wanted. There aren't errors in the console either, so what's the problem? A Vue instance can only be mounted to one element. We're allowed to have children elements, but there can only be one root element per instance. If multiple elements match the value we pass into the mount function, Vue will assign itself to the first element it finds. This is why the first element displays the name, and the second one doesn't. What if we wanted to show the name in both elements? We would have to create another Vue instance with similar data. Let's give it a try. How about you try this as an exercise? Assign both elements unique IDs. Then create a new instance for the second element. Lastly, try changing the data for the second instance. You don't have to change the property names, just their values. Pause the video and give it a try. Welcome back. If you were able to do it, then congrats. If not, that's fine as well. Let's do it together. First, we have to update the elements on the document. We're going to assign ID attributes to both elements. The second element will have an ID of app2. Next, let's switch over to the JavaScript file. Update the instance to select #app rather than .app. After that's done, we'll make a copy where the selector will be #app2. Lastly, to show we have 2 unique instances of Vue, we're going to set the first name data property for the second instance to Jane. That'll do it. If we did everything right, we will be able to refresh the page with both names appearing. There we go. We have 2 unique instances of Vue. Even though they have similar names in the data object, they're completely isolated from one another. The first name and last name properties are unique to each instance. If we were to open the Vue developer tools, we'd find both instances appearing. Creating 2 instances isn't common. Typically, you will have a single application on any given page. I wanted to show you this as you may come across situations where you'll want multiple Vue instances. For example, you may be working on a site where you'll need to create a couple of small widgets. In these cases, you can create multiple instances to manage your widgets. We're going to focus on one instance. I'm going to comment out the code for the second instance in the HTML file, as well in the JavaScript file. I recommend you do the same before proceeding to the next lecture.